So we're in the middle of 3 weeks on the three marks of existence. Today's sutta is called the Girimananda Sutta. It's an interesting sutta to me, at least, for a few reasons. One is the setting and how Ananda, you all know about Ananda, came to the Buddha in regards to his friend Girimananda, who was ill, and he asked the Buddha, "Would you go talk to him? Maybe make him feel a little better." And the Buddha put it back on Ananda. He said, "Why don't you go and you bring the Dhamma to him?" And that's an important teaching, because even though at that time the Buddha was still alive in the world, he didn't see himself as the only person that could teach the Dhamma. He knew how important it was for the sangha to help each other along and do that. And of course, Ananda was qualified to do it. He just wasn't feeling comfortable with doing it yet. So that's why I decided to start the teacher training here, so you'll all be comfortable. This is in the introduction too. The understanding the Buddha's referring to and I'm referring to is an experiential understanding. It's not just an intellectual knowing of these. A good example might be, I don't know why I was used changing the oil. I could read a book about how to change the oil in a car. I don't really know anything much about it until I actually do it. And this is the same way. We can read all the Dhamma that we want, but if we don't integrate an eightfold path to have the mindful understanding of what's occurring, meaning the eightfold path, we're not going to develop it. I wish Ram was here, because we had a great discussion on the, maybe I can use, Ram had an experience with a family member that in the past would get quite heated, and he felt himself going there. But he also caught himself, and he started applying the eightfold path to the situation. He became mindful of what was occurring, and he questioned whether what he was doing or inclined to do was unskillful, and he realized that it wasn't. And so he practiced restraint in the moment when he was caught up. And that's the point. And so he had a direct experience of integrating the Dhamma in a real life situation. The Buddha's Dhamma, I don't know if anything else actually could work that way either. The Buddha's Dhamma doesn't work in a conceptual way. We can imagine it, we can mythologize about it, we can consider it magic or miraculous. It's none of those things. It's simply a practical experience of recognizing and abandoning wrong views or fabricated views of ourself in relation to the world around it and around us. And because of fabricated views, we're not living in reality, and that's what creates stress and disappointment and suffering and disease and all types of things. Okay, so the Girimananda Sutta, and I'm going to do my best to read through this as quickly as possible, but I'll likely comment here and there too. And if you have any questions, please put your hand up or just holler. On one occasion, the Buddha was staying in Savatthi in Jita's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Venerable Girimananda was sick and distressed. Ananda went to the Buddha and asked if he would visit, meaning the Buddha, Girimananda, out of sympathy for him. The Buddha replied, "Ananda, if you would go to Girimananda and tell him of the 10 understandings, it is possible that upon hearing your words, his distress will be relieved." And notice he didn't say that if you go there, this will definitely take place, because it's up to Girimananda to hear and integrate what Ananda was saying to him. The first understanding. These are the 10 understandings you should teach Girimananda. The understanding of impermanence. He starts out with the main theme of the entire Buddha Dhamma. Understanding impermanence doesn't end impermanence. It simply ends our clinging to thoughts, words, and ideals that are impermanent, but thinking that they're permanent, meaning we create an identity over impermanent objects, events, and ideas. So impermanence in that sense leads to distress, it leads to stress, it leads to suffering. An awakened human being is still living in the same environment of impermanence. But since there's no longer any clinging to things, impermanence is just an ongoing experience of pure freedom. We're just in the flow of everything changing without the need for it to be any different than it is. The Buddha continues, this Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, bringing us right back to the grounding aspect of meditation. We can't do it without it. While establishing jhana, knows that the 5 clinging aggregates, form, feelings, perceptions, mental fabrications, and ongoing thinking rooted in ignorance of 4 noble truths, are all impermanent. This is called understanding impermanence. Notice how I said there's going to be very little commentary as I read through this, but here comes one.
You can't do that.
We're going to get to in 2 or 3 weeks, depending on how much time we spend on dependent origination, we're going to get into specifically on 5 clinging aggregates. But the 5 clinging aggregates, as just described, simply describe the ongoing personal experience of suffering, of stress. And if you look at each one of those components, they're all impermanent. And so it is not because of form, feeling, perceptions, mental fabrications, and consciousness being present in our experience that causes stress. It's creating an identity and clinging to each one of those things that create stress. Clear? And so that's really all you need to know about the 5 clinging aggregates, because if we let go of clinging, we're no longer being affected by that clinging, and we're in the flow of impermanence, not reacting to it. Number 2, the understanding of not self. So first the Buddha addresses the first mark of existence, impermanence. Now the second mark, anatta, not self, the understanding of not self. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, the Buddha reiterates that. He's emphasizing the importance of deepening concentration for any of this to be effective. While establishing jhana, does not self-identify with what is seen or what is heard, what is smelled, what is touched, what is tasted, or what is thought. Notice the similarities to the Bahia Sutta. The Buddha said to Bahia, for in you, when what is seen or what is heard or what is smelled, what is touched, what is tasted, or what is thought, there is no you there, then there is no you here, there, or anywhere else, which means there's no you that is subject to suffering. Doesn't mean that he's vanished. It simply means that the problem has been resolved. They have developed restraint at the 6th sense base. This is called understanding not self. And that little story I told about Ram was a good example of practicing restraint at the 6th sense base, where things are occurring. Number 3, the understanding of unattractiveness. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, knows the entire body, surrounded by skin and filled with decay and unclean things. They know there is this body of hair, nails, teeth, skin, muscle, tendons, bone, marrow, organs, feces, urine, phlegm, sweat, and tears. Understanding thus, they are always mindful of the unattractiveness of the body. This is understanding unattractiveness. It's interesting that the Buddha could use nearly anything to point out unattractiveness, couldn't he? He could use moral concepts such as violence. I don't want to get into a long list of things, but almost anything could be used to point out something that is unattractive. But he used something that we are so close to that we fail to recognize the unattractiveness of this. We become enamored with it, and we think it's the most wonderful thing in the world, and it can never be sick, and it can never age, and it can never die. And we're missing the whole point of impermanence, then, aren't we? We're missing the first description of dukkha. Dukkha is sickness, birth, sickness, aging, and death. And he goes on to some more examples of that. But it is it is within our body, when we finally unite our mind and our body, that we can observe these 3 marks of existence. And this instruction here directs us to look at something that we'd either ignore or we don't want to pay attention to. Excuse me. Every one of those things that the Buddha mentioned are prone to decay. They'll all eventually become an aspect of dukkha if we're attaching ourselves to them. But if we understand the process, then we can depersonalize even, which I think is remarkable, especially where I'm at right now. We can depersonalize even the aging and the sickness process. And I'm assuming I haven't come up to it yet, the death process, because we're not taking it personal. And that's the whole point of the Buddhist teaching is to let go, take anything personal, including what occurs within this body that I have no control over. I don't have to take it personally. I can remain at peace no matter what's occurred. There was quite discussion, great discussion about this point Tuesday night. That it's a little bit harsh, and there's another section coming up too, to look at ourselves that way, but it's just realistic. I'm just curious, Kevin, what do you think of that reference here? If I can put you on the spot.
I think a lot of different things, in a way, I think it's our evolution and the way we are, it's our nature to be attracted to other bodies and to think of our body as attractive in order to reproduce in a way. That's what it is. And when I'm meditating just now, listening to bird song and thinking, isn't that pretty? But it's the birds attracting other birds.
Yeah.
And it's just there. It's not for me, maybe. But I liked it better than the machine sounds that I heard. So we try to personalize all these things.
Oh, yeah. And I think, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
But then I think the Buddha exhorts us to get beyond that and to realize that even though, nature is telling us we need to have these attractions, that it is going to decay. So there's no sense in binding to it and to being attached to it.
Yeah, thank you. May I say why I asked you specifically?
Sure.
Kevin's a physician, he's a doctor. And so he has a particular view of these things.
And that goes through my mind when I think about it too. I think I see bodies, parts of them are decaying in their children. And we all see this, I think, in our families and people, it's all subject to decay.
Yeah, and even you mentioned that something else that I didn't touch on is that for the purposes of the continuation of the species, there needs to be a certain attractiveness between people. But also, if we can understand the nature of the person that we are also attracted to, we won't create unrealistic expectations about them either, will we? Because we'll see them clearly. They're just human beings, just like the rest of us. And that can help resolve a tremendous amount of interpersonal issues when we simply see each other clearly. All that, well, I'm not going to get too far. I promise I'm not commenting too much, am I? Understanding thus, they are always mindful of the unattractiveness of the body. Excuse me. That was unattractive. This is understanding unattractiveness. Number 4, the understanding of drawbacks. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, reflects on the drawbacks of the body. They understand the various pains of the body, such as disease of the senses, disease of the organs, disease of the mind, disease of the body, dis-ease from changing weather. And that actually means all the changing, ever-changing aspects of the environment we live in. It's not just it goes from sunny to rain. This is understanding drawbacks. Again, bringing us back into our body, though. Why would we want to be so enamored and clinging to this body when there's drawbacks? Doesn't mean we should discard the body or do anything hurtful to the body. We just recognize it, just see the body clearly. 5, the understanding of abandoning. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, abandons all thoughts of sensuality, all thoughts of ill will, all thoughts of harmfulness, and all thoughts of unskillful mental qualities, not thoughts of those. This is understanding abandoning. When you remember when we went through right effort in the Maghavabanga Sutta and other sutras, right effort is actually doing that, recognizing these things, recognizing and abandoning them. Number 6, the understanding of dispassion. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, understands this is peace. This is the exquisite stilling of fabrications. This is the relinquishment of all clinging. This is the cessation of craving. This is the full development of dispassion. This is complete unbinding. This is understanding dispassion. So the Buddha is covering so much material in this sutta. He began with explaining to us the environment and the misunderstanding of self and what it can lead to. And now he's starting to turn our minds towards seeing things clearly, looking at the body in a realistic way. And now he's pointing out the direct experiential nature of the Dhamma, of becoming dispassionate about things that we have previously self-identified with and so created passion over. Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. This is complete unbinding. This is understanding dispassion. Number 7, the understanding of cessation. Remember how I started this. It's not just understanding that we want to have this experience of cessation. The Buddha is teaching us that we have to have the experience of cessation. It's not enough to know it or think of it as the goal, or imagine it as something that we think is pretty cool and maybe I want it. We have to have the experience of doing it. The understanding of cessation. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, understands this is peace, this is the exquisite stilling of fabrications, this is the relinquishment of all clinging, this is the cessation of craving, this is the full development of dispassion, and this is complete unbinding. Unbinding from what? Unbinding from fabricated views. And that leads to something that is very important, because it came up Tuesday and it came up again today. We had a great discussion about something, and I'll point that out in a minute. The understanding of distaste for every world. Now, the Buddha is referring to the physical world we live in, and I could say the physical universe, but also any fabricated world. Remember the series we went through on right concentration and jhana, and the emphasis the Buddha placed, and I think in every one of those particular suttas, there were 7 or 8 of them, about not attempting to establish yourself in any non-physical realm, meaning doing a lot of good works or gaining merit or chanting forever or bowing forever, because if you do so in a future life, you'll get rewarded with a better life. That's much of modern Buddhism. Or even the idea of, and that's a non-physical, and I'll call it an imagined existence. It's a speculative existence, right? There's no proof that no matter how many prayers or how many chants or how many bows I do, that some future life is going to be better. It's just pure speculation, no matter how many people say it. But the same thing is true about the self-establishment in my own mind of an imaginary me, meaning, and I don't know why I always use this. There was a time in my life when I wanted to be the world's biggest roofer. I did. And I set out to do that. And it drove me, that one thought, that I am going to be the biggest roofer in the world. I'm going to have more contracts than anybody. And that's the way that I thought. And it drove me, it almost killed me by the time I was 30, because I worked so hard with that driving me. It was all an imagination. Even if I had become somehow the world's most successful roofer, the motivating force that whole time was just my imagination. And it was in that imaginated non-physical realm that I established myself in that created all that stress for all those years while I was working 8 hours a day, 20 hours a day, 8 days a week. To do that, it was driven by it. Was that a good example? Mm-hmm. And so that's just a speculative of an establishment as thinking that if I do something in 400 lifetimes, I'll have a better life. It's the same exact thing, even though there's a cognitive dissonance between the two. It's the same thing. We're just living in our imagination. And if we're living in our imagination, we're living in a fabrication. Okay, the understanding of distaste for every world. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, refrains from all worldly entanglements, including this world and the speculative world, or all worldly attachments, compulsions, and conditioned thinking. This is understanding distaste for every world. It's not, when you read this, it sounds like almost an astronomical or overwhelming task to understand distaste for every world. But all we have to do is to refrain from all worldly entanglements, attachments, compulsions, and conditioned thinking. Do you all think you can do that? Why not?
Sometimes we can touch it if you're meditating or during meditation. Maybe that's about the only time, for a few seconds at a time.
Do you believe that you can get there through the Eightfold Path? Yes, no?
Refrain from entanglements.
Yep.
Entanglements. So that's a big, I feel like that's a key word.
It is.
You're not refraining from the world, you're refraining from entangling.
Entanglements,
Clinging
attachments,
and
compulsions, and conditioned thinking.
Craving to what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Or phenomena.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that even goes against human nature. And it's difficult to divorce yourself from, say, what's going on in this country and just sit back and twiddle your thumbs.
Yep. But that's not really what the Buddha is teaching. He's not teaching anything.
It's not divorce.
Yeah, but it seems like it. It seems like I have to keep my self-referential ego in place in order to stay involved in the world in a meaningful way. But the truth is, it's just the opposite.
No, I think you need to keep your ego out of it, but you can still help.
Well, I think
take it wrong if it,
I think you can be remarkably more effective. I think I'm thinking of King Ashoka, 250, 300 years after the Buddha's passing. He was the most violent ruler the world has ever seen. Think of all the monsters we've had, Pol Pot, go down the list. He was by far more bloodthirsty than any of those. And yet he came across the Buddha's teaching, so changed his thinking that he never harmed another person, but so much so that he started something we can't figure out today, 2,300 years ago, universal health care. And then he went so far out of his compassion that he started universal veterinarian care in a society that was prone to sacrificing animals. It's remarkable. So he had a much more compassionate response post engaging the Dhamma than he ever did before. And I think that would be true. But it seems like that, though, doesn't it, Mary?
Yeah.
That I need to keep myself in this, because look at, this is wrong. And
no, but you can be so much more effective, I think, by, you can think that it's wrong, but not getting angry and just start out by you doing things, the right way.
Yeah.
And hopefully others will fall in line. If they don't, they don't.
And you're free, and you're okay with that too, aren't you? Because now you don't have to, just because you feel that peace should prevail in the world doesn't mean that it's going to, or that everybody has to agree with you. But at least you'll maintain a calm and peaceful mind. And there's not much else you can do about it realistically, can you?
Yeah.
There really isn't, except do that. I didn't do too good with my promise before. Thank you for that. This is understanding distaste for every world. Now we're getting into Lorna's favorite part. The understanding of the undesirability of all fabrications. I'm going to say it again. The understanding of the undesirability for all fabrications, including the fabrications that the world or myself should be different. Why? Because it can't be. It can change, but right now it is what it is. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, is horrified, humbled, and disenchanted with fabrications. This is understanding fabrications. Do read it again. I'm going to read it the way I originally wrote it. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, is horrified, humbled, and disgusted with fabrications. This is understanding fabrications. We've had a good discussion Tuesday about the use of that word. Now, remember, this is a translation from the Pali. I haven't been able to find out exactly what that word is that was translated to disgusted, but most people don't like the use of that word because it's too harsh. And we've had a great discussion then in this morning with Lorna. It is a harsh word, but it doesn't mean that we should be disgusted with ourselves. It means we should be disgusted with fabrications. Another word for disgust is distaste. It means exactly the same thing, doesn't it? Or disenchantment. And so maybe disenchantment is a better word there. Yes, no?
Disgusted sounds like averse to me, and that always makes me like puts me at I start creating the tension happens.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, and being the author of this article, I can change the word. I think I will, but well, it's a translation anyway. And I think you understand. I do that often, translate certain words just to make it more relevant to dependent origination and Four Noble Truths. And I thought about this when I rewrote this sutta. It isn't too strong, but it really makes the point. And if I'm not taking the idea of disgust personally,
Mhm.
and I think about some of the things that I've done in my past because of my fabricated view, I am disgusted with my behavior, and I'm disgusted with that fabrication, and that provides a lot of impetus and motivation to keep going. And I'm not, but I can see where we could fall into beating ourselves up with that word, and so maybe disenchantment is a better, more gentle word. So I think I'll change it. Yes,
I like disenchantment. I mean, to me it means it's being fooled by our fabrications, and we should not be fooled by that.
Yeah, so maybe I should leave it then, because we really should be
But
disgusted with our fabrication.
I mean, it's strong, and maybe in addition disgusted, we need to overcome it.
And to me, disenchanted means to no longer be in love with your fabrication.
Yeah,
Right.
To no longer admire the fabrication that you're coming up with.
that's a good point. I think you're right, and in that way, disenchantment is a better translation, isn't it? I mean, it's more relevant to the entire Dhamma.
Because disgust, it does border on it sort of causes that beating oneself up in a way. I mean, it's so close to allowing you to go there.
Yeah, I think you're right. And again, I thought about it when I wrote it, and I think I'm gonna change it again
What
to
are the three
disenchantment.
words?
Pardon me?
What are the three words?
Horrified, humbled, and disgusted with fabrications.
I'm trying to think of a word that I like the word divorced there. Actually, I think there's where you're like, no, almost like a
Yeah,
a word that has like the idea of restraint in it.
yeah, but divorced has more of an outcome rather than a
Yeah.
direction.
It's like a forced separation.
Good
Yeah.
point.
Disenchanted.
Yeah, I think okay, disenchanted it is. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, you don't think about it. I guess I am kind of hanging on to that.
What? I didn't hear.
When you think about disenchanted, it's like, I'm kind of in love with that little thing right there.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that is the problem, isn't it? I love the me that I've created, no matter how much trouble it might get me in, and how much sleepless nights I put myself in. I love it. I love me, and I love my fabrications. Even the opposite of that, which is really the same thing, is people that are very full of self-loathing. Is kind of the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't fulfill your own beliefs of who you are. So now I beat myself up. Great
But also,
conversation.
I mean, there's the meta to this is that we're conditioned by the word, and it gives us a conditioned response to that word disgust.
Oh yeah. If there wasn't that conditioning, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. But there is, and so it's reasonable to put a better word in there. I think because.
Yeah. I think you see, you sometimes don't see your being involved or entangled in your own fabrications until you have some distance between
Yeah.
what was happening, like you have some distance, and then, I mean, this just happened to me last week. Then when you look back at what you did or what happened, you realize it was because of your ego and because of your entanglements.
Yeah.
And then you can feel disgusted with yourself, which is not, I don't think, the right feeling. That's beating yourself up. The right feeling is just realizing that that was an entanglement that you somehow didn't have the concentration to see at the time. Now you can see it and just become disenchanted with the idea of wanting that particular kind of thing to happen, and realizing that you really caused stress for yourself and for people around you because you wanted to control a certain situation.
Yeah, you wanted things to be different than they
You
are.
wanted them to be different than they are,
Yeah.
rather than just letting it be, just living, just being with, how was it you said a few minutes ago, just being with,
Life is life.
I can't remember what it was,
Got
just
it.
being with life, or just being with,
Yeah.
instead of word, but
The radical
Totally
acceptance,
get
not the word I use, but it is.
Yeah.
It's just being at peace.
Mhm.
And we did this Tuesday, and I think we all, because we focus on that word disgusted, but the Buddha, the translation from the Buddha's words is, we're also horrified and humbled by our fabrications.
Yeah.
See,
And-
that's how I was like horrified and humbled
Yeah.
by realizing what my fabrications
Yeah.
had gotten.
So it kind of covers the discuss part too, there,
Yeah.
doesn't it? So,
It does.
okay, good, great discussion. Number 10, the understanding of mind. So the Buddha has taken us from giving us the environment, impermanence, the not self characteristic, how that not self characteristic in the impermanent environment should be seen and then experienced so it can be recognized and abandoned. And now he brings us back to the 4 foundations of mindfulness as he instructs it, and what to do to develop that calm and peaceful mind so that we can address these issues. 10, the understanding of mindfulness of in and out breathing. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded, sits comfortably, legs folded, their body erect, setting mindfulness to the fore, remaining mindful of the breath in the body. They breathe in. We all do that, right? That's how we begin our meditation. Remaining mindful of the breath in the body, they breathe out. Now, it must have been the same during the Buddha's time as it is today, that because of a misunderstanding and a need to make things our own, put our own spin to things, that breath meditation has taken on some really ridiculous practices, such as, and I won't get into all of them, but any practice that within the Buddhist framework teaches to manipulate the breath in any way is something that the Buddha addressed then and is still addressing now, basically saying, don't do it. However you're breathing in a meditation session, hoping to develop mindfulness, however you find yourself you're breathing, that's how you breathe. While breathing with long breaths, they know they are breathing with long breaths. Notice again, the Buddha is not teaching, first spend 10 minutes taking long breaths, then spend 10 minutes taking short breaths, then spend 10 minutes taking only long exhales. He doesn't do any of that. When breathing with long breaths, they know they are breathing with long breaths, mindfulness. While breathing with short breaths, they know they are breathing with short breaths. This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves. I will breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to the body. Sensitive to the body simply means that we are aware that we are in a body. While breathing in, bodily fabrications calm. As a natural consequence, in other words, my intention isn't to calm fabrications. As a natural consequence of shamatha vipassana meditation, as a natural consequence of right meditation, as I breathe in, mindful of my breath, bodily fabrications calm. While breathing out, bodily fabrications calm. This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves to breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to joy, meaning be aware, be open to the joy, sensitive to pleasure, and sensitive to the mental processes. Again, it doesn't mean we're chasing after joy or pleasure or mental processes. We are sensitive to them. We're mindfully aware in a dispassionate way. This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves to breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to thoughts arising and passing away. Again, remember the Satipatthana Sutta. These are the instructions the Buddha gives in that sutta. This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves to breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to satisfying the mind. A self-referential mind, a mind rooted in fabrications, a mind rooted in ignorance, is always grasping and never satisfied. That's the essence of dukkha. They train themselves to breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to satisfying the mind. And I bet you would all say that you had that experience, even if it was just for a few moments in your meditation, that you satisfied your mind. That just builds. You know, and imagine living your life moment by moment with a satisfied mind. That's what the Buddha's teaching. This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves to breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to releasing the mind. There's a great Zen, well, it's not a great Zen book, it's a great title for a Zen book, and it has a picture of a fist like that. It has two fists, if I remember. One like that, one like that. And the name of the book is Opening the Hand of Thought. You don't need to read it because it's very confusing and contradictory. But the point is that is the point. We have such a tight grip on our fabrications, we won't let them go. Look at the stress in that fist, but we release the mind, release those fabrications. We're free. And again, notice the progression here of these 10 understandings, from describing the environment to the difficulties to the freedom within, and this is really one of the most important points, within this same environment. Why is that significant? Because most spiritual/religious teachings, and even most mindfulness teachings, are taught as a way of escaping our environment and substituting some other speculative environment. The Buddha taught just the opposite. He taught that we must unite the mind and the body, and that mind must be released from fabrications for peace to prevail. If I create any other fabrications, I'm just compounding the problem. This Dhamma, and that a fabrication in that sense, as a way of adding on, could be substituting anything that I think I need to awaken. And that could be anything. As someone who's recovered from drugs and alcohol, I could easily convince myself that 2 or 3 drinks a night is okay because I need that to relax and calm my mind. Or there's a new burgeoning movement on psychedelics now, and I agree that there's some benefits to psychedelics when they're carefully used. Not just kids randomly dropping acid and eating mushrooms. I don't think that's very good, but it's still changing no matter how. There may be some benefit to a fabricated self. There may even be some relief to a fabricated self, but then we become dependent on that to solve the issues of fabrication, rather than directly addressing that. Am I making that clear? Yeah. So we don't want to. Again, the Buddha's teaching. This is the path. And as soon as we substitute anything else, we've lost the path. This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves. Breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to impermanence. Again, just being mindful that impermanence is present. Breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to dispassion. Breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to dispassion, to cessation. Breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to relinquishment. This is called mindfulness of in and out breathing. Ananda, go to the ill Girimananda and tell him of these 10 understandings. If Girimananda develops these understandings, his disease may be relieved. Ananda, having learned these 10 understandings from the Buddha, went to Girimananda. Girimananda, hearing Ananda, was relieved. His disease abandoned. I think that's the end of the sutta. I think it's a remarkable sutta in its coverage of the 3 marks of existence and the clarity of how to integrate this process. But you may think differently. If you do, it's okay. Jen, what do you think?
That's a good one. I need
Yeah.
to hear that one today. Yeah. I'm gonna take it home and take it to all the people that are in my life right now that I think could use it.
Yeah.
Whew. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lorna. Good morning.
Morning. What John was referring to earlier was that I didn't like the idea of that we need to be feel so strong about our fabrications to use the word disgust, to be disgusted. But what I was doing, I didn't realize I was doing it, that I'm making and taking the disgust that I should be disgusted with myself. So second thoughts and hearing it all again, I got the more understanding that we should be just disgusted that it's happening, as to point our minds back to reality and back to our breath and back to the real aspect of time and where we are and things like that. So I'm kind of like all softened down about it now. But
I'll leave disgusted in there, that I won't change.
As far as my practice going, I was kind of like surprised with this sutta that the Buddha put impermanence first and not anatta. I'd have thought anatta would have been first, impermanence second.
So why do you think it's
So-
presented this way? And it almost always is, by the way, when the Buddha's addressing all three marks.
What, impermanence?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I haven't picked up on it before, but I did in the sutta and realized then the importance of impermanence and seeing it. And I've been trying to, in my meditation, I've been trying to see every moment and not have the overriding anatta connecting all the moments together. Because I think if we didn't have anatta, we would see each moment individually and
Yeah.
uniquely.
Yeah.
It's the
Everything would be discrete.
everything will be, yes.
Yeah.
And it's anatta that mushes time together, you know, that,
Why? Because it has to own everything.
yes. And so as I say, in my meditation, I've been trying to, I'm better at disconnecting with anatta than I am with connecting to time as time really is, seeing it discreetly, every moment discreetly. You're bursting off your cushion there, John.
It's remarkable. What did Jen say about ignorance? Ignorance requires time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. I
Bursting
thank
off
this
the
lady. I thank this lady so much.
Oh,
I really do.
I feel the same way about you.
Thank you. Anyway, but so as I say, getting back to the beginning of this sort of concentrate on impermanence. So I've been trying to sort of do that.
And it's working.
I don't know. I know it. I can sort of understand it, know it, but trying to experience life as each individual moment or second, or, you know, that's the goal, I guess, to drop the anatta, and then everything will be clear and distinct and unique and fresh. I used the word fresh on Tuesday, you know, it was.
Yeah. But you've had those experiences.
Okay.
Haven't you? You've talked to me about it.
Well, yes.
Would you say that there's less eye making in your life now than there was 3 years ago?
For sure.
That's the point. And the I don't know if I think I said this Tuesday, but not today. Impermanence, not self, anatta, and dukkha, stress and suffering, are all part of that last, are all part of dukkha. They just different aspects of suffering. In other words, if you just look at the subject of anatta, the not self characteristic, there's suffering. There's five clinging aggregates. If you look at our understanding of an impermanent environment, because of a misunderstanding of it, there's dukkha. They're all components of that same thing. They all describe dukkha in ways that we can actually deal with the situation. In other words, if the concept was just dukkha, our human minds don't have a way of understanding that. We need those points of reference of where we develop it. I mean, think of the brilliance of this. This is something that was never, I mean, it wasn't in any books or any unit and nothing. The Buddha figured this out on his own, and by an incredible level of concentration and right mindfulness. You remember in the Nagara Sutta how he described his process of going from a confused and circular mindset to this development of understanding by simply seeing things clearly.
I just wanted to say that I feel like, just going back to Laura's original statement of like why the Buddha would start with impermanence. I mean, start with impermanence instead of anatta. I feel like impermanence is just the kind of more, not maybe so much the profound understanding of impermanence, but sort of the intellectual understanding of it is easier for people to understand.
Oh yeah.
Than it is to really get into like the mind and how we are, you know, the way our minds work and how we define ourselves. That's something that, talking about things, you know, changing and not being the same all the time, it's much easier to wrap your head around.
Yeah, and it gets us back into the actual environment that we're living in.
Right.
And remember the setting. Ananda's going to Girimananda because Girimananda is sick. And so one of the first things the Buddha is reminding Girimananda through Ananda is it's temporary. And how, I mean, I remember having this thought many, many years ago that when we have a cold, a simple cold, we feel like we're going to feel like that forever, don't we? We don't think it's never going to, we're always going to feel like this. And most people that have whatever disease it is feel, I mean, that's one of the debilitating things is you don't know that it's, might progress, but, and he immediately sent Ananda there to remind Girimananda, this is a temporary state. And even if and then pointing him back to the body, that this is the body you're in, accept it. If you don't want to accept it, you're in trouble. Thank you. Kevin, good to see you this morning.
Good to see you too. Thank you, John.
You're good?
Interesting with colds, people every day come to me, with a cold, and they are really worried that it's the end. It's going to be permanent, or that there's something horribly wrong with them. And earlier in my career, I would actually get disgusted with it. I would get angry. Why are you bothering me with this? And now I can see what's going on, and I can give them some comfort and say, this will last about 10 days, 2 weeks, and it's longer than I think.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how it seems like there's no knowledge of it in the world.
There is, and even after experiencing it yourself, the sickness to the wellness, you think you always have it.
And then, I think with meditation, more often than not, I can get caught up in my thoughts. I think as we all can, and the Buddha tells us thoughts will occur. And then I think I do get disgusted with it. I think, I'll spend a large part of meditation and thoughts are just keep occurring. And I eventually think these thoughts I am really disgusted with these thoughts. But then I can actually turn it and say, I'm so disgusted with myself for having these thoughts. So it's something where we need to be gentle with ourselves. Maybe I need to be gentle with myself. Because when it goes well, I think there is joy and there is release in a way, and maybe I crave that too much. But that takes us down that whole remember again.
Right. Yeah, thank you. So I was pretty sure about changing the word. Now I'm not so sure. But,
Yeah.
you're right, though. From a
I think. Do you think it just needs explaining?
yeah, maybe.
Just,
Maybe I can put
the-
another just little comment in there. But
Yeah, the disgust is a good word. But it needs to be very, very clear.
yeah,
You disgusted.
yeah,
What?
well, we found out. that,
Yeah.
And it's hard to dispassionately be disgusted with something I've done unless I have the right framework. It's hard not to take it personal.
Yeah.
And that's my role is to recognize that. I mean, I try to present the Dhamma in a way that can get past that tendency to react towards things. And, so what's interesting to me is the reaction to that word. I kind of anticipated, but didn't think there would be this much interest in looking at it. So it's a great discussion again. Thank you. Becky, good to see you.
Good to be here. Thank you. I just really liked what Kevin said about how when you meditate, it's just so hard to keep the thoughts from coming and going. And sometimes I'll meditate for a whole half hour and it'll be like, what did I just do? Where am I? All I did was, it was all thoughts, it was all thoughts.
You never came back to your breath once?
It doesn't feel like it at
Really?
the end. It doesn't feel like I did.
Are you?
And it's you can get disgusted with yourself when that happens. You can say, wow, I guess I can't do this.
I think you need a shock collar.
But I love that. But if you just, I've never gotten, so upset that I just wanted to say I'm giving up. But
You
to
want to make the
hear,
right decision and say, I will.
but
go
when
back."
you do make the right effort, and this business of having thoughts all the time happens when I have not been meditating the way I should, maybe for, like if I've been on vacation or something, I'll come back. But then also it happens when my life is really out of control. I feel like it's, and I want to meditate and I want to have that. So maybe I am clinging to that feeling too much. I don't know.
Well,
but if you do the right, I say to them, if I just make the right effort and that's my thought, then I can have a few times when I get that feeling of calmness. And I mean, I know from experience that it will be a releasing experience, and that I will learn more as I go along. But it's definitely a couple steps forward.
Thank you, Becky. Notice what you did there, and we all do it. It's the reason why we're having a problem with the word disgust is we're applying it, we're taking it personally.
Right.
So the Buddha taught that we should be horrified, humbled, and disgusted with fabrications. It doesn't say we should be horrified, humbled, and disgusted when our meditations aren't right.
That's right.
Because really, I'm using you as an example, but that's the problem. You blamed yourself. You were disgusted with yourself rather than the underlying fabrication that caused your mind to be that way.
Exactly.
So that's an important distinction. So, and again, being disenchanted with our fabrications in that application would be recognizing that it is a fabricated view that causes me to be distracted by my own thoughts. And that we should be disgusted with, I think, or at least disenchanted.
Exactly.
We shouldn't like it a lot anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, I
Thank
get
you.
that. Thank you.
Mary, good to see you this morning.
Back and fell off the wagon, away for a week, and then
Yeah.
took me a while to get back. It always takes me a while to get back in sync.
I'm glad you came back.
Yeah, and when I do have some frustrations, but I always try to remind myself that every time I come back to my breathing, that's a positive stroke.
Yep.
and you know, and I will get back into it. I will go home and reread this because it really is fascinating, and you know, the word disgust to me really it makes you want to beat yourself up, but disenchanted with a dash between the dis and enchanted, I think gives people pause to think,
Yeah, without the reaction.
yeah, yeah,
That it really is a distraction at that point. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, don't give me a couple hours to change it.
Yeah,
and then you
right,
can great. A great class. We'll finish with metta. Just to mention, our retreat is 5 weeks away. If you're going to go, please sign up soon. I hope you all can come. I know Becky won't be able to make it this spring, but in the fall. There's another announcement, but I can't be important. I'll put it in the newsletter. So we'll finish with metta, as we always do. Find your relaxed meditation posture. Become mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath. And these are the Buddha's words on metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class this morning. Peace. Oh, and our great friend Frank brought some pound cake from his bakery in Philly. It's out there. There's a lot of it too. So take big handfuls of it.
Cake.
Really good too.